the character that's behind this business, right? The true character and ethic and integrity and vision and entrepreneurship, right? This is hard to do. It's like people talk about all the time. Oh, it's an overnight success. 29 years in the making.
Yeah, right.
29 years in the making and so
29 years of closing the gap.
Of closing the gap
between where I was and where I wanted to be.
Welcome to the Richie Huffman Podcast, where we discuss entrepreneurship, wealth creation, and getting the results that you've been looking for. Where we believe that hard work works. So let's get started. Hey guys, welcome back to the Richie Huffman Podcast. On today's episode, we really got into it with my son, Evan Huffman, and one of my mentors, Chris Steer, on what it's like to be a child inside of an entrepreneur family. We talked about the importance of family vision, family huddles, and what it truly takes to be good stewards of family wealth. This was really an important episode for me. I hope you guys really enjoy the show. Okay, guys, well, welcome back. I am here with two of my great friends and brothers, Chris Steer, one of my mentors, and our second son, Evan Huffman. So I'm in the presence of some real love here today, guys. So thank you for joining us.
Oh, thank you, Richie. I'm ecstatic to be here with Ev. This is awesome. This is great. Evan, one of the things that's been on my mind for years now, I've had the good fortune of now knowing Evan for probably 4 years or so, and I've never asked you this question, which is crazy to me, but what was it like growing up as a younger kid in the Huffman household, with this entrepreneurial mindset and background? What was that like? When did you pick up on that?
Oh God, here we go.
A long time ago, to say the least.
I'm gonna grab a cup of coffee and sit back and watch this.
You might want to hear. Yeah, you might want to write some things down.
I would say my dad definitely instilled that from like a very young age. My dad constantly talked about how to make yourself financially successful and financially stable, so then you can provide for your family and future generations to come.
You guys were listening.
Yeah, I was.
Didn't appear to be.
Didn't appear to be. So key term that he used to give us all the time was generational wealth. And that's what you want to create for your family, and that's how you provide for the future and for yourself currently. So I think that was the biggest thing that he used to talk about, and it was just saving more than you spend. He would say you want to save about 70%, and then you spend the 30% of what you have. And I think that was kind of the biggest takeaway that I got from a young age, and that's what he instilled in me and my brothers, my sister.
Good job.
How about that?
Good job.
I'm glad we're recording this. Right? We've got some really good foundational knowledge. But that's interesting, right? Because having worked with many entrepreneurs and owners and family businesses, it is a rare thing when you start early in having these conversations about generational wealth, having these conversations about just foundational financial literacy. What was the driver for that? When did you start thinking about sharing it in that way with your kids?
I think it's like this. I think that it's, what do you want out of your life, right? What vision do you have for yourself and for your family? And once you have that vision, wherever that vision comes from, right? It could come from a movie, it could come from a book, it could come from a seminar, webinar, whatever it may be. It's once you've established, what do I want my life to look like, and who's the person that I want to be? Now, let me go search and find that information of how to accomplish that. So, when we talk about generational wealth, and I thought, how cool would it be if I could give that gift to my kids, and my kids could give that gift to their kids, and it would just keep going and going and going. So I had to go in and research of what does that mean? How do you accomplish generational wealth? And I just started immersing myself in books about family wealth, and how to do it, and just started executing on it. And started sharing it.
And I think I've been able to be a witness to that and how the structure that you have around it. It's not just, hey, learn about the foundations of investment, or learn about just the foundations of how the Huffman family made and continues to build wealth. It's beyond that. Like, so for example, you are in the midst, Evan, of a 7-week program here within the Huffman family brands.
Yep.
And so part of that that's another level. That's not just foundational understanding about what generational wealth is. It's like, I want you to understand how our family of brands works. So just a couple things from you, Evan. What did you enjoy about this experience? What are some of the things that stuck out with you in terms of the idea of the Huffman family brands and the generational wealth that's being created here?
Yeah, so I thought that I understood the business before I got here, and that could not have been further from the truth. I think that from when I first got here, the first day, me and my dad went down to Johns Hopkins Hospital, and we're meeting with them and talking about opportunities to help support them in a charitable sense. And I think that was something that like stood out to me right away on the Huffman Family Foundation side. So I've kind of got to see like the different elements of how each department or brand goes into helping one another. I think that was very cool. We did something with the Ronald McDonald House actually before I started working here as well, which is another charitable like cause that we wanted to get involved in and help them out in whichever way we can. And I mean, yeah, I think my 7-week experience, I've got to kind of go tip my toes into like different departments here. And I've worked with like the real estate construction side, I've worked with the marketing department, I've gone to the CTI trainings, the Caliday stuff, the Celebrate Enterprise stuff, and just everything in between. It's been cool to watch. So
how about that, right? 7 weeks
Very
deep
cool.
in like this immersive course.
Yeah.
Right? Really understanding and learning. Is that what your vision was, to continue to just open up your kids to a deeper dive into the brands?
Yeah, yes. But again, I want to give credit where credit's due too. Like, I share a lot of my vision. First of all, I think you have to be willing to share what your vision is.
Yeah.
Because you can't get there by yourself.
Right.
And
Right.
I say that as I'm looking at you.
Yeah.
Right? I share a lot of my vision with you, and to tap into your opinions and your expertise and what you've seen and what you've read to help me put it into action. So I think that's a really important piece.
Appreciate
Right?
that, man.
Yeah, it's total. Like like a lot of people, I think, have dreams and visions in their head, but they don't share them with anybody else, which is the biggest mistake that you can make. The more you share those dreams and goals with others, then you can surround yourself with those that love you, care about you, and support you, and want the best for you also.
Exactly.
Right? And you always say this all the time, in our relationship, iron sharpens iron, and it's totally true.
Yeah. Well, and it's thank you for that, number one. Number two, thank you. And number two, thank you for modeling what it means to have intellectual humility.
Yeah.
You have visions. You are a serially successful entrepreneur, and you have been smart enough and intellectually humble enough to then put pieces around you to strengthen and build. That's what the great entrepreneurs do. That's what the great business leaders do. Is they cast a vision, cast a plan, and then surround yourself with great people.
Yeah.
Right.
And those that want to be that want to be a part of it.
Want to be a part of it. Like, come join this journey, right?
And I would even extend that to Evan, right, and your children. Like, that's exactly what we're doing, right? I'm extending my vision and sharing with Evan what I want for them. And he said it earlier. I mean, he's heard his entire life, generational wealth, generational wealth, generational wealth, which was my vision for the family.
Yeah.
And then, being due diligent enough and patient enough to find ourselves sitting here today having this podcast with a young man that's now fully engaged in what I've been talking about for years. So I feel really blessed, right?
Yeah.
That I feel blessed. First of all, I have amazing children, amazing son, but also not giving up on continuing to put the effort and the time into that vision when sometimes you didn't know if they were, and it's why we laughed earlier,
Yeah.
not knowing whether they were paying attention or not.
Right.
But
Sure.
most people, they try, they're like, they're not getting or trying. It's like, this is not what they want.
Yeah.
But it's what I want. And
Yeah.
I just kept pushing and pushing and pushing until he has a choice to say, Dad, I see it now, or Dad, this isn't really what
Right.
I want for me.
Exactly.
And either one would be fine with me.
Right. Which is a critical piece, right? Which is there's an old phrase, prepare your child for the path, not the path for your child.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Yeah.
Totally.
And I think that's an example of what we're talking about with Evan
That's
right
so
here,
true.
right now, right?
That's
And
so true.
I'm thinking about right now, I'm smiling because we had a family huddle, which I want you guys to talk about in a little bit, but we had a family huddle your first week that you started your internship here, like 7 weeks ago.
Yeah.
Ish. And you came into that meeting, you were aware of even so much more after day 2.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right, of your learning. But what I appreciated about it, Evan, was that, and you said it already on this podcast, you thought you knew some things, and then you're willing to take the next step to learn more. And you had some critical thinking from that very first week that I was very impressed by, which I've continued to hear from members of this team in terms of your engagement.
Yeah.
Has it been easy to sort of immerse yourself into the learning aspect?
Yeah, I'd say so. I mean, life's obviously a journey in itself, and you constantly are learning things that are new and different from what you already know. I would say that the team here has definitely treated me the best way that you could possibly think of, and they've taught me a lot and tried to like give me even the most smallest like informational pieces that will help me be successful in the future. So
That's awesome.
They're happy you're here.
Having
really
like Lauren and Chris and my dad and Stacy's been great from real estate construction. Kim gave me one-on-one, like all those different people have really been helpful and insightful, and just literally telling me what they do on a daily basis. And then that gives me the opportunity to see how each cog kind of helps contribute to the wheel. So.
Well, and you've seen this in your athletic career already, and now you're seeing it through the Huffman family brands in a more direct way. Well, we're proving the point about what you shared earlier, which is you got to share the vision.
Yeah.
Once you can share the vision and open yourself up that way, you can attract people, attract talent.
Yeah.
And, those individuals, and you could go on and on, I'm sure, because the people that care about this mission and care about this vision for the organization want to share it with you. But it's a credit to you as well for showing up, being engaged, being a learner, not a knower, as we talk about.
Yeah.
Right? Which is fantastic. But you also said something earlier, Evan, which I think is important when we talk about generational wealth, right? It's also about the impact.
Yeah.
And you mentioned Ronald McDonald House. You mentioned your visit down to Johns Hopkins. You mentioned, Richie, talk a little bit about how critical that piece is to the generational wealth, because it's not just about the family, it's about the impact that you all can make in the community, which has already been significant.
Yeah, and I, what's important to me is like, and I say this to the kids all the time. What would someone say about this family? Right? And that's our vision of our family, and who are we, and what do we stand for? Right? If I think most families, if they don't know who they are and what they stand for and why they're here. Like, why are we here? Like, why did God put us together? I mean, God gave me 5 great kids for a reason, to do something with them, to do something with it.
Yeah.
Then what a shame it would be if everybody was on their own individual path trying to figure this out, right? It goes back to, we're stronger in numbers.
Yeah.
We can do more together and make more of an impact together as a family. And I think a lot of families have really lost that. Yeah. These parents that are like, oh, I can't wait till they turn 18, get out of the house. Yeah. What?
Yeah.
What? Yeah. Why would you want that for your child?
Yeah.
Right? It's us. We're a family. And I think a lot of families do this well, and you can see the impact that they make. And some people really just don't see it that way. And I think that's unfortunate.
That your words conjure some imagery in my head. And when I think about your home, I think about it being like this, has this gravitational pull, right?
Everybody's there.
Everybody's there, right? And because people feel welcome, they feel invited, they feel cared for, right?
Yeah.
And I think that's a hallmark. And Evan, have you also seen, in terms of gathering as a family, like just for example, let's talk about these. You all do family huddles,
Yeah.
right? And I know you've been very, very intentional about having at least 3 to 4 of these every year. Do you feel like that has been helpful to you and your siblings in terms of understanding more about what your dad's vision is for, and your mom's for the family vision and the family's generational wealth?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, having those meetings, whether it's every 2 months or however so often, definitely allows us to see what my dad's goals are for us, and then also realize our own goals ourselves. So like when we have those meetings and we create our own individual goals, when, at least for me, like when I went back to the ones that I had originally made a year ago, I was like, all right, well, check, I hit this one, check, I hit this one. I kind of hit this one, and then I didn't hit this one. So what do I need to do or change in my life to make myself hit the goal that I want to hit originally? I think those things are definitely beneficial, and it helps you hold yourself to a higher standard than most other people would.
Gosh, that's well said. That's really well said. And I keep going back to your athletic career as well, because some of those principles are just very true, right? Which is, I've hit certain goals and there's a gap in others. What am I going to do in my behavior, in my mindset, in whatever it takes to advance? So I love that analogy, because I know you pulled so much from your athletic career, and you're a national champion, right? You're a national champion. Not many people can say that,
Right.
Yeah. And that requires something different. Do you feel that you're being a part of a national championship team, and one that's going to be perennially competing in national championships, that helps you in this dynamic and the business side?
Yeah, I would definitely say so. I think the work ethic that like my coaches instilled in me, like Coach Berkman's one of the most historic coaches of all time, most winningest coach of all time. And since day one when we got there, he held us to like a really high standard. And he said that every day you need to close the gap, and it's closing the gap between you and the people that are ahead of you. And I took that personally, and I took that as like a challenge. And I think from him saying that to me, that led me to do whatever it took to get on the field, whether that's going to the gym after we'd already worked out earlier in the day, or getting up before class and going hitting the wall, or watching film. Like stuff as simple as that just makes you a better player and makes you a better person. That work ethic translates to business as well, and I think that's huge.
Yeah, that feels good to hear that,
I
right?
love
Like that. And you know what I think about? I think about translating that work ethic into the business community. And there's a term, we talk about employee engagement all the time, right? And what does that really mean? Well, it's my willingness to do my best, but it's also my discretionary effort. It's going to hit the weight room after you've already done the team lift, right? It's doing the extra sprints, the extra stick work. And the same thing is true in the business context. It's who is so connected to the vision that they're willing to go above and beyond, right? That to give that discretionary effort.
Yeah.
It's pretty remarkable to see that transcend.
The gift that Evan just gave me was in closing the gap, right? And I think each and every day we're working hard to close the gap between where you're at, where we're at, and the vision that we have.
Yeah.
Right? We're trying to close that gap. We're trying to make that vision a reality of what we want.
That's right.
So, I think that's the gift he just gave me. And how are we going about that?
Yeah.
Closing that gap of where am I compared to the family we want to be, whether it's the reputation, the philanthropy, the lifestyle, the business, whatever it may be. We're constantly working hard to close that gap.
Yeah. Well, I've heard this come up in the strategy meetings, right, across the Huffman family brands, which is the concept of what is and what could be, right? And that's about improvement. It's about asking good questions. It's about critical thinking. But let me go back to the generational wealth piece for a second.
Sure.
One of the things that I've seen, especially over the last year and a half or so, has been your ability to connect to the kids even more directly as you've gotten older about more specific business principles or financial principles. And I think it means a great deal when they get to hear from you about how you built the business, some of the financials of the business, some of your experiences, I think that really lands really, really well. And can you talk a little bit about how that came about and maybe how it's changed, Richie, when, let's see, I mean, Evan's, 20 years old, maybe 21, right? But 20?
20, yeah.
20,
got 4 more weeks.
Okay. How you're able to engage with Evan now as a almost 21-year-old versus when he was, 13, 14 years old, the ability to speak more directly into the business and into what it means to have generational wealth.
Well, again, I think I've been waiting for this moment for a long time, right? So it's like all that hard work and all those conversations where I might have thought I was wasting my breath or they didn't care, is now coming true.
Yeah.
But I would break your question down in these two ways, Chris. The first one is the reason I did the way I did it was because I wanted, in showing them the business, teaching them the business, was so that they appreciated the business. Because I think a lot of people think that successful companies, successful people just happen automatically.
Yeah.
They were born that way.
Right.
They had lucky breaks, whatever it may be, right? People try to make it seem much easier when there is nothing that's easy, right? And business, my philosophy, business should never, ever, ever be taken for granted. Because the moment you take your eyes off the ball, take your foot off the gas, somebody will leap over you.
That's right.
And next thing you know, you're in trouble.
Right.
So I wanted them to appreciate the business. And I still want them to understand this does not happen by chance.
Yeah. No.
And I think that's Evan's takeaway. That's what I wanted him to take away. Like, they probably, I don't know, when they're kids, they see dad get up, he goes to work, never really complains about much, so things must be easy, right?
Right.
It just happens.
Yeah.
He started a company, and all you have to do, all you got to do is just
29
start.
years later.
Right.
Yeah.
All you have to do is just start.
Yeah.
If you start,
Yeah.
it just happens. And I want all of them to realize every day is a challenge. Every day the business has to be managed. There has to be strategy, right? It's one of the first questions I asked them. I was like, did you know there was a strategy behind this stuff?
Yeah.
Most people think that you just do it. No, there's really good companies have strategies behind it. So I want them to understand that part. Like, business should never be taken advantage. It takes a lot of work. It takes a phenomenal team. It takes vision. It takes strategy, all those important ingredients. And then second, the second part of your point is now, how do you become good stewards of the business or the wealth that has been created? Now you go from, being a good steward of the things that have been created, right? And that's kind of what I'm doing with Evan and his brothers and sisters, is that. And I'm teaching them now, okay, this is how it's created.
Yeah.
This is what it takes to create it. Now this is what it takes to be good stewards of it. Right? It goes back to the whole, live off of 70% and invest 30. Like, that's a really good philosophy. And if you adopt that philosophy and be good stewards of that philosophy of the 70-30 rule, here is the outcome of that. Should be the outcome of that. And then from there, he's going to take that information, that philosophy, that good stewardship, that beliefs, and he's going to transfer those to his children. That's the only way it's going to make it to the third generation and the fourth generation.
Exactly.
It's the only way.
And that's the only way,
It's the
right?
only
Because
way.
we see this, unfortunately, where we see these family businesses, and the wealth doesn't make itself to the third generation, right?
Because they don't know how to handle
They
it.
don't know how to handle it, and they haven't had the structure or the environment to be taught to be an environment where learning is encouraged. But I'll give a shout out to Addison right now, your daughter. We were at the huddle 7 weeks ago, and she was asking about investing in real estate, and she used the term ROI that we were all just sort of looking around, looking like, where did that come from, right?
Where'd you look that up?
Where'd you look that up? Yeah. But it's like, it's just the idea that when you're around it, like when you're around it, when the conversations that you don't think that they're listening, man, picking up everything, right? And I think what I'm excited to get your feedback on, Evan, is for the program, this immersive internship to be made better, right?
Yeah.
So, and because I would imagine that there's things that you were made aware of that you now have more of an interest in, that maybe next year you would want to explore more intentionally or deeply, right? And so looking forward to get some of your feedback there, and yours too, right?
Yeah.
Like obviously you've been able to not only architect, but also be an observer through all this, and seeing how we can make it even better for the next Huffman child to go through it, right?
You're giving us a lot of credit here, Chris, and I appreciate it. But we are at the very early stage of this. I mean, we are still developing this. We are still working our way through this. Again, the boys are only, the kids are only 22 down to 14. So we haven't even, we're still planting seeds right now and watering these seeds. We haven't even really seen the true fruit of these seeds that
That's
we're
well said.
planting.
That's well said.
I won't see, I'll see it probably in, I'll probably see it when, I don't know, 10 years, maybe 6 years. But I think it'll be 2 stages for me to see how these trees have produced. It'll be, when they both, when Olin comes back from the Marines, but when Evan comes back from the universities, and now we're really starting to put a lot of this into practice, right? And giving them more responsibilities and seeing if this really sticks. Chances are, I got a really good chance that they will stick, right? But then when they start having kids, can they transfer that same knowledge, philosophy, beliefs, who we are as a family? And I mean, a lot of what we're talking about is about, our constitutions. I'd like maybe even talk a little bit about that and laying that work. So we're planting a lot of seeds.
Yeah, you are planting seeds. You're watering. You're germinating the seeds, and the seeds are seeking the sun, right? And I think that's what's really cool. And I think it's important to understand for anybody that is watching this podcast that doesn't necessarily know the family. And it's one thing to have structure and learning and to be brought up in the principles of the business and generational wealth. It's another to actually love each other and to want to be around each other. And that's the one thing I would say above all, is that you all want to be around each other, whether it's at the farm, whether it's at your home, whether we're at the beach, wherever, at the game. There's this intensity about being together. And I think that is the fact that you can pull off both of those at the same time, because a lot of times, unfortunately, we hear that the business is driven so hard into the family that everyone's like, get me out of here.
Yeah.
Get me out of here.
After 5 o'clock, we're done.
Like, get me out of here, right? And so I think that must be said. That's an important part of this. But there's another thing that you said earlier that I want to bring back into the conversation, and I think it's important for you to hear this too.
Okay.
Which is, you're laying out the opportunity, and you have said to me many times, it would be great if, let's take Evan. Evan goes and works in a different organization for a few years, and could possibly bring that learning and that experience back to us. It's not so prescriptive, right? That you aren't willing to be able to work within each kid's life journey, right? And I think that's a big part of this, right? It makes it that much more accessible. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Does that resonate with you? Yeah.
Yep.
Listen, the only thing I want to be to my kids is their coach and their mentor. That's it. Because somebody's going to coach them.
Yeah.
Somebody's going to mentor them.
Yeah.
Because they're growing up.
Yeah.
So I want to be that person.
Yeah.
Not the only person, of course, but that's my sole, I think, responsibility as a dad.
Yeah. Well, I think that speaks into some of what you've been building with. Sometimes we would refer to it as the family playbook, but it's become even more than that. It's become this family constitution, right? Which was a word that you shared with me probably a year ago, and has evolved to the point where we have the Huffman family has a guiding document, a living, breathing document, which has everything from Evan's internship to the estate plan for the family to how would we bring in a new member of the family, which is becoming that's going to be a real thing.
Yeah,
right.
Real critical.
And how do we do that in a way that aligns with the family vision, aligns with the wealth strategy, aligns with
values,
the
beliefs.
values, the beliefs, and that's a really big piece of that. There are not many multi-generational families that are willing to do that amount of rigor, work to make that happen.
They will pay the consequence.
Right, because then you're putting things at risk.
Yes. You're putting the whole family at risk.
Yeah.
Right, and we've seen that before.
Oh yeah, it's
right?
not a pretty sight because it's magnified. The raw emotion and the pain is magnified when it's the family.
And you don't want to put you don't want to put your child in that position either, right? Because you don't want your child to choose between their spouse that they've married and love and their family.
Right.
So if there's not an alignment there and an understanding of what this family stands for, its beliefs, its values, how we spend our time, how we like to spend our time. If that's not aligned, man, that's going to be a tough marriage.
It's going to be a lot of emotional labor for everybody in the family, right?
Unnecessary.
Evan, to that point, what would be some advice you would give next generation family members about how to learn more about the family business or even navigate that?
I would say that literally doing exactly what I'm doing right now. I mean, there's definitely other jobs that I could be working. I could be down the beach being a bar back or doing something along those lines, or figuring out, literally just hanging out. I could be sitting on my butt all summer, just playing lacrosse, working out, doing whatever. I think literally going in and immersing yourself in it, like you guys touched on earlier, is essential to really gaining a better knowledge about the business. And then I don't think I've ever told my dad this, but what he was talking about earlier about how other people don't have this same type of plan and like how they're going to go about things. I think that one of my biggest nightmares, and me and my brothers have like talked about this, is like if we don't gain an understanding about it prior to getting into it, how are we going to keep it going after my dad no longer will like be here?
Yeah.
And like letting that like dream and all the hard work and all the dedication that he's kind of put into creating this whole thing from the ground up, it would be a shame to say the least. So
it's powerful to hear you say that, and it's powerful that has come up in conversation among the siblings. That says it all, man.
It's huge. And what a shame it would be to your kids.
Yeah.
Right.
That you weren't responsible enough, or not responsible, didn't see the opportunity to give them the gift that you guys have been given.
Yeah.
The opportunity.
Right. And I think it also goes back to your mindset, Evan. What I picked up from you over the years is that you're not afraid of doing the work.
Yeah.
Right. You're not afraid of being a learner. Right. You're not afraid of putting yourself out there. And I think that's a big part of that, which is I don't want this wonderful, incredible family legacy and this incredible family of businesses to be anything less than what your father's vision was for it, right? And I think it's an accountability, right? It's I own this, right? And I think that is a mindset that is invaluable.
Well, Chris, as you know, it's also given us direction, right? Because you and I are building this, right? So can we make this vision a reality of generational wealth? And so, Evan's engagement and Preston's engagement and Olin's engagements and Addison's and Camden tells us quite early that we got a chance here, guys.
Yeah,
right.
Exactly.
So if Evan wasn't engaged and did go and spend the time down Ocean City's a bar back and blah blah blah, that would tell us we need to re-engineer this thing, right? We'd probably have to go out and start looking for those that could continue the legacy, and they would still benefit from maybe, or we don't, or we sell this thing off and we go and move on and live our lives. So their actions now, especially now that they're a little bit older, is giving us really good indications whether this vision can become a reality.
Yeah.
Right. So so far, I think we both like what we're seeing.
No, that's for sure. Right. And I think that velocity has increased over the course of the last couple of years in particular, right? As we've seen Olin and Evan really become men.
Yeah. And now we're trying to figure out what role can they play in this enterprise.
Right.
Right. I think a lot of families don't do that. They have a very successful business. They don't really start thinking about the next generation, what roles, and I think most kids are really honest with themselves and honest with their parents if their parents let them be. Yeah. Meaning, like, I'm really good like that. I really like marketing. Yeah. So what Evan's going through right now, right? Like, he'll find his niche and we'll put him in the niche and now he's gotta produce. Yeah. He's got to play the role and he's got to produce just like anybody else would. Yeah. If he can't, then maybe that's not the role he's cut out to be. And we have to put that person in that role because the enterprise and the businesses can't suffer just because his last name's Huffman. Right. Like that. No, we don't do that. Right. But I think, and maybe
it's standard.
Yeah. People listen to this podcast. It's like, you got to set it up just because my philosophy, just because they're a family member doesn't mean they're right for the business. Right. I know companies too. I mean, they got the whole business is made up of cousins and sisters and brothers, and it's just they don't have what it takes, and the business suffers. But their family, we got to give them a job. Yeah.
Nope, that's not it, and that's not the standard that I've seen here, and it's certainly not the standard where when you look inward into the businesses, you have constructed such clarity around, you've seen this, I'm sure, over the last 7 weeks, my friend, which is role competencies, role clarity, how the role connects to the strategic plan, how the metrics and the data help us learn so that we can achieve our objectives within the plan and that ultimately meet our purpose and our vision. And you would not set that to the side just to let a cousin come in, and that's not how it works. Can't do it. And that's the demise often of the second to third or the third to fourth generations, because I think you said it earlier, my man. It's like we're talking about generational impact.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Talking about people who don't exist today.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And that's pretty mind-blowing.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's pretty mind-blowing. Last question here, guys, and Evan, I'll ask you, what, especially over the course of the last 7 weeks, and you've got this even more crystallized understanding of what the Huffman family brands are all about. What are you most impressed with that your father has driven and built and led over the last 29 years?
Something I think a lot of people don't understand is how much time and effort went into it prior to it even being Celebree. Like, so when people ask, like, what my dad does and how, like, what his role is and so on and so forth, I don't ever, like, just go straight into Celebree. Mm-hmm. I tell him how he woke up at 4 and 3 in the morning and drove a pie truck for however long, and then he started investing in real estate properties and buying them and leasing them to people, and then he bought a tanning salon and did that for a while, and all those different kind of steps that he had to formulate in order to go into creating what he's created today. Yeah. I think that's, like, where it all starts from. And then I'll kind of dive into what Celebree is and how the Huffman family brands works and all this different stuff. But I think where it started is kind of the most important, because that shows that, like he talked about earlier, it wasn't just, like, handed to him. Mm-hmm. It was, he had to wake up at 4 in the morning or 3 in the morning and drive around when it was freezing cold. He told me a story a couple weeks ago when we were driving to Baltimore about how he crashed his pie truck slipping on ice. Like, little stuff like that, like, kind of incentivizes you to make a difference as opposed to just, here you go, here's the keys to the car, go off and drive it. So
exactly, man. That's really well said, and I think that does speak to the character that's behind this business, right? The true character and ethic and integrity and vision and entrepreneurship. Right? Mm-hmm. This is hard to do. Mm-hmm. It's like people talk about all the time. Oh, it's an overnight success. 29 years in the making.
Yeah, right.
29 years in the making and so
29 years of closing the gap
between
between where I was and where I wanted to be.
Yeah. Perfectly said. Perfectly said.
And you know, you got to be careful because, you know, you're always moving the goalposts.
Mm-hmm.
You're always extending the gap.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Right? But you got to, you know, when you hit the end zone, you got to celebrate.
Yeah.
And I think I'm just learning or starting to learn how to do that.
Mm-hmm.
Like, when I get here, then I'll be happy.
Right.
Nope.
Yeah.
This is where I'm headed,
Yeah.
but I'm enjoying it as I'm headed there. And
Yeah.
I know people have heard that 1,000 times. Hearing it, saying it, and doing it is another art.
It's a discipline. It's an art.
There's another art. And I
Yeah.
think that art is the whole, for me, is the whole 70-30,
Yeah.
right? I'm going to
Yeah.
enjoy investing and moving the
Yes.
goalposts by 70%.
Yeah.
But I'm going to enjoy my life off
Yeah.
the other 30, and don't get fooled by the 30% because the
Mhm.
30% could be a big number.
It could be a big number. Exactly.
All right, guys, thank you so much for tuning into this episode of the podcast. Don't forget to follow me on LinkedIn or Instagram at Richie Huffman Celebrate and TikTok at Richie Huffman 01. We've got more great episodes lined up for you, so check back with us soon. Until then, remember, hard work works.